Hi there, this is John Frenay, and welcome to an Encore presentation of our Legacy Business Spotlight. These are best done in person, and with the current state of emergency restrictions, that's just not possible. So we will be re-releasing our past episodes every Saturday at noon until this pandemic is in our collective rearview mirror. Until then, enjoy this Encore presentation of our Legacy Business Spotlight.
Some businesses succeed, some don't. Then there are those that seem to have been around forever. The true entrepreneurial success story. How did they do it? What was their vision? What makes a success? In this special episode for Eye on Annapolis, we speak with the true success stories, those business owners that have been around for decades, learn from their successes and failures. Now, here's host John Frenay.
We're here with Steve Anderson, who is you're the owner, right?
I am, yeah.
And of Third Eye Comics,
Yeah.
of Third Eye Games and Hobbies, and Third Eye Comics in Lexington
Park,
Lexington
Maryland.
Park, and Third
Yeah.
Eye Comics in Richmond, Virginia.
Yep.
Which is great. And did you get your start here in Annapolis?
Yeah, Annapolis was our first location. We opened in 2008 in April, right when everything went crazy. And I was told, "What are you doing? Why are you opening a business?" And turned out to be a really good time to do it.
Well, you were on the you were in that shopping center on West Street where the marijuana dispensary is trying to open up and out at this point.
Yeah, that's where we were. We were there the majority of our time, and then before that, we actually we were in a little shopping center on Old Solomon's Island Road, which was like it was us and then a couple taxi cab places.
Okay.
And then we moved up the road to where like the cigar place is now. On Old Solomon's Island Road, and then in 2012 we moved over to West Street, and then the West Street location was our home for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, and that's where you really expanded.
That's where we really grew.
Okay, because you had Third Eye Comics, which was on the very end,
Right.
And then at one point you got Third Eye Games and Hobbies.
That's right.
Which was 2 stores down or something. I think it was something in between.
It's the opposite end of the shopping center.
And then you I say just recently because it hasn't been just recently, but about 2 years ago, you moved over to Chinquapin Round Road, sort of on the corner of Margaret and Chinquapin, I guess is probably the best thing. And again, you've got 2 separate storefronts there.
Yep.
You guys, I mean, I was reading some retail trade journal or something like that, and there was the 10 best comic stores in the country.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. No, I'm not a true comic guy. My girlfriend's kid is, and I'm like, oh, I wonder where. It's like number 1, number 2, Third Eye, Annapolis.
What
the heck? I'm like, wow. And
yeah.
I didn't realize that you guys are, this big right here.
Yeah, we're definitely one of the largest in the country. Now, to be fair, there's only about 2,000 comic shops operating currently in the United States.
Really?
Yeah, there's not a lot out there. It's an interesting industry where there's a very dense population of comic book stores on the East Coast and the West Coast. And then
that's where all the Comic-Cons are.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it.
You have a good amount in like Texas and like Chicago, but like the further inward, you kind of need to be in areas where you have like dense populations and everything's drivable. A lot of areas where there's only like one comic shop for every like 3 to 4 or 5 hours, there's not as many stores because it's just more spread out. It seems like it seems like this kind of business lends itself more to like 45 minutes from DC, 45 minutes from Baltimore.
Now, how did you get into comics? I mean, was this a hobby that you liked? I mean, have you always been into comics?
Yeah, no. I mean, I was,
a night with bad drugs, or something.
I was a huge nerd as a kid. I grew up, reading comics and watching horror movies and skateboarding. I loved all that stuff, and I found a comic book store in Bowie, Maryland, when I was like 12 years old. I just started going there, and the staff just were very cool, very nice, and I clicked with them, you know what I mean? Like, and it just felt like a cool place to go, and I felt at home. I just was into it, and I knew right then and there I wanted to be in this business, and I started working in a shop. Actually, that same store, I started working there. It was under different ownership when I began working there, but I started working there when I was about 19, maybe about to turn 19. I was 18. Okay. And I worked there for about 5 or 6 years. I still wanted to open a shop, but for my folks were like, you got to do something a little bit more realistic. I did a few other jobs, and I wasn't super wild about. I ended up basically saying, well, I'm gonna screw it, and I started delivering pizzas and selling my own comic collection. I went back to work at that shop when I was 23, and I worked there for another 3 years. Yeah, when I was 26, we got the phone call from out here in Annapolis. There was a store that was closing. We were able to talk to their landlord and take the space on and buy some of their inventory. And that's when we opened up Third Eye. The store was Green Alien Head.
Green Alien Head, that was on Francis Street.
Yeah, it was.
They were in the basement of Francis Street at one point.
Yeah. It was downtown, and then they moved up to Old Solomon's, and I had mutual friends that knew the owner, and he heard I was trying to open a store, and he said, "Look, I'm closing, and if you want to buy any of my inventory and fixtures, and and we worked it out, and."
He's probably kicking his ass right about now, looking at how you.
It's funny. He's actually one of our customers at the Richmond store. Yeah, like I was like, holy crap, Ted! Oh my gosh.
It's kind of neat. What I found, and again, prefacing that I'm not a huge comic book fan, but I find that the store and the times that I've been in it, both stores here, and actually I've been to Lexington Park one too. It's a very inclusive.
Yes.
Clientele.
Yes.
You can see the scary looking Hell's Angel guy with the tattoos and the spikes coming out of the head and everything else. You can see the LGBT people coming in. You can see the businessman, the nerd, and it's
Annapolis City PD. I mean, we got everybody.
It's just a really kind of a cool atmosphere.
Yep.
Now, what made you decide to expand from comics into games, and why not do it under the same?
Yeah, so we started carrying tabletop games. I'd say about the second or third year, we had a small section. And
now, when tabletop games, you're not talking about like Monopoly and
no,
and
like kind of like it's similar but kind of different. Like I think like the most popular one would be like Catan, which is like a resource management game, or like what's another one? I think there's one called like Munchkin or Dungeons and Dragons is obviously like one of the big ones. Like we carried the basics. And we had a very small section, and we watched it, and and we watched it grow, and then we moved over to West Street. It grew a little bit, and then we were like, wow, more games, and then we started bringing more games in, and grew it a little bit more, and then before we knew it, we were like, we've got a pretty big game section. I don't think we can add a lot more to it. We were building it up. It kept growing up. The fixture did, and I was like, no one's gonna be able to reach this stuff. So we talked to our landlords there, and we said, hey, there's an empty space on the end. And I've got a couple of really, and this is kind of like, honestly, this is the kind of the thing that like has spurred most of our growth. I had two really talented people working for me that knew a lot about games. I said, hey, I'd love to, make you guys the managers of the store. And I wanted to give them room to keep growing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we did, you know what I mean? Like anytime we do something new, it's always because I've got these great people that have been with me for several years, and I'm looking for ways to keep giving them room to grow and make a career out of this,
Do you find that are your customers on both? I mean, do you have your Third Eye customers for Third Eye Comics go over to games, or are they two separate client bases? Or
there is a good deal of crossover, but each store does have its own kind of clientele. Yeah, so I mean, while there is crossover, I would say that there are two audiences, and people will. I guess the best way to put it is people will hit each other's store for like gifts and things like that. But I mean, there's definitely like if you're into the gaming thing, that's probably where you're
That's
headed.
your destination.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think you've got an aura about the store that.
Right.
I mean, I like doing business with Third Eye Games and Hobbies.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I go to Third Eye Comics?
Right.
And vice versa there. I mean, you've got a good experience there.
Yeah. We're very the core values of our store is just basically everybody leaves happy every time. Like that's our goal. And
it's funny. I told you that my girlfriend's daughter was I can't remember. I guess it was Christmas. I went in and bought. And I said, I made a point to send you an email and saying that just to let you know, I went in. It was late, and I mean. They were right on it. They were so polite. It was just so quick to do. And I know as a business owner, you hear the shit, but the good stuff, the good stuff you don't necessarily always hear. But you do have a good staff there.
Thank you.
And one of the things that you do really, really well, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, is every now and then you go down Chinquapin Round Road now, and you see like lawn chairs, umbrellas, and people like hanging out. You think like the Grateful Dead's in town or something like that, or maybe it's Nancy Hammond selling her print. I don't know, but. You have these different events for the different releases and signings and everything else, and that's something that you've really grown that the fervor about it.
Yeah. I joke around a lot with the staff and stuff, and I when I was a teenager and stuff, like I used to be into music and stuff, and I always wanted to be a frontman, but I'm terrible at everything. I have no musical talent, and but I do have a good air for showmanship. I love building an event. The one thing that we've been lucky, because here, especially at Annapolis, we have just this great engaged customer base. All of our stores have a great engaged customer base, but we have a lot of people up here that have been with us for about 10 years as customers that just they're there as much for the experience of the community feeling of hanging out as they are for the event itself. And we've definitely worked hard to foster that. And, sometimes we do, like, just ridiculous, silly stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we had a thing for Conan the Barbarian. They just brought him back, and we did a big signing for it. And, the first 20 people, we had little gold paper crowns that could be King Conan. They get, you know what I mean? And, like, we do, like, giveaways.
But they eat that up.
Yeah, they love it, and it's fun, and it's everybody likes to, just get ridiculous. And we try to make it fun, and, we're very good about making sure that the experience as a whole it can be stressful sometimes, especially with the really big events. We try to make sure the experience is consistently good. So, we always make sure if it's a big event where we have people camping out, we have porta potties, we schedule staff later, we schedule staff earlier, we're engaging with them, all that stuff.
What was your biggest event, best event? Or let me put this: your most favorite event.
Yeah,
I mean, it may not have been the biggest or the best, but
it's it's hard. It's hard to pick one, but I think that I think my personal most favorite is we did a signing in our second storefront on Old Solomon's with a couple comic creators, and they were reasonably popular names in the industry when we brought them in. It was our first time doing a signing with known creators, and that to me is my favorite because it was such a big deal for me. Because I was flew them in and we drove them to the store, right. And I was so nervous because you're like, oh, these people are a big deal, you know what I mean? And it was really cool, and that's the one that I personally really kind of cherish the most. Our most insane and hectic one was probably Peter Mayhew, the actor who played Chewbacca. Right. Yeah, that was off the charts. That was insane.
Right.
Yeah,
I remember that was about 4 years.
Right when the first of the new movies came out, Force Awakens. It was 2 weeks prior. Man, that was nuts. That was insane. That was very stressful.
But it's over. It's funny you talk about driving the celebrities and nervous. I was listening to a podcast where a guy was a tour manager for I think Kenny Chesney. I think he was saying, and he said how it's so funny. You never know what you're running into when you get there. He says one time we were at one show and it's like they say, okay, well we've got this yacht here tied up next to the amphitheater, and that's where your green room is. That's where you can get dressed and eat and everything else. And it's like this 70-foot yacht.
That's crazy.
He says the next night, you get up there and the backhoe drops the porta potty in front of the bus and says, "There you go." He says, it's like a crapshoot. You have no idea what's going on, and it's like you got to explain. They'll say, "Well, this is what we got now."
Yeah.
You put on the show and you put it on for the people, and then that's what the goal is about.
Yeah.
You also do game nights at Third Eye Games.
Yeah.
And those are those every night pretty much? Or?
Yeah, we have a pretty full calendar. Every night we have something running. So we do Dungeons and Dragons on Wednesdays. We do Magic the Gathering on Fridays.
That's it, the Magic.
Yeah.
I've got a friend of mine whose son's into it.
Oh, it's huge. It's super popular. We have Warhammer and Pokemon and everything.
Is Pokemon the app still a thing?
It is. It's not quite as popular as when it first hit, but it's still out there. Yeah, right. Yeah. Both of our storefronts, the old one and the new one, because just a testament to how many Pokemon fans we have become gyms. Mm-hmm. So it's like a special place where people come when they're fighting. Okay. I probably sound super old because I don't know how to play it, but
I remember when that first came out, it was such a thing. My girlfriend and I were in Ellicott City, and we sat down on a bench and for about a half hour just sort of watched, and we just picked people walking up the street just looking down at their phones, and then all of a sudden looking up and I'm going, Pokemon. And we made this little, it was like 140 people in Ellicott City in the middle of the week at 6 o'clock at night. I thought it was unbelievable.
It was when it first hit, those first 6 months, it was crazy. Yeah.
No, it really was. What's the most popular comic book series?
Right now, I would say, Batman's always the king.
Right.
I feel like that's my answer whenever I do an interview about what's the big thing, because Batman always. But right now, I would say Batman is probably the big one. In terms of And that's just sheer sales. You know what I mean? In terms of like what has the most buzz right now, there's a graphic novel by a guy named Tom King who actually he's semi-local. He's from the DC area. Really cool guy. We used to work for the CIA, and just a really interesting dude. But he's one of the most talented comic writers in the business right now. Like, he's a true superstar. He's really gifted. And he did a book called Mr. Miracle, which is an old 70s DC Comics character that Jack Kirby created when he left Marvel to go to DC. The Mr. Miracle comic, the New Gods, all those characters, they're basically kind of Jack Kirby kind of taking all sorts of different religious ideas and kind of just working them out. Darkseid's kind of the great Satan character, and Allfather or Highfather is like the great Messiah character, and then in the middle you've got all these other characters that are kind of like Cain and Abel, but it's all kind of superhero style in a way. And it's really fascinating and it's really weird. And Tom King's Mr. Miracle is a very modern, accessible kind of take on it, where it's dealing with things like post-traumatic stress disorder, it's dealing with depression, it's dealing with a lot of mental health issues against the backdrop of this epic superhero religion craziness.
That's kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I heard the term graphic novel.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine that she unfortunately lost her husband, just married him, and actually was just pregnant in 9/11 in the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And in coping with this, she wrote a graphic novel, and I remember she says, "Hey, well, I wrote a graphic novel," and I'm thinking, why are you telling me this? I'm going back to my college days where you read Penthouse Forum or something like that. I'm going, oh, and then I realized, okay, this is an illustrated book, and it was a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've expanded, though. We've got all these locations. So we've got the two here in Annapolis at this point, and then we moved to Lexington Park. When did that come in?
Yeah, Lexington Park first started in Prince Frederick, Maryland, and we realized that Prince Frederick was too close to Annapolis. Most of the customer base in that area, at least for our business, you really only need one comic shop for every 30 to 40 minute radius. You know what I mean? We're destination, so people are willing to drive there. If you have a good store, they're gonna make the trip to that store. The Annapolis store is a very special store. It's not going to be something we can replicate on that scale because it's massive, it's big, it has everything. Our other stores are fantastic, but they're scaled down versions of Annapolis. The Prince Frederick store was only about maybe a 30-minute drive from Annapolis, and most of the folks that are coming from there we found that most of them were still just coming to the Annapolis store anyways, because they were coming up here to go to the movies.
It's just another 30 minutes or 40 minutes,
exactly.
And they've got much, much more.
Exactly. And all of our clientele at that store was actually driving up from Lusby and points south. So after doing a little bit of research, we were there for about a year, maybe a year and a half. We moved that store to Lexington Park, Maryland, right off of Three Notch Road.
Right, and that's right outside of PAX.
Exactly.
Now, is that a big draw for you? I mean,
it is? Yeah,
the military.
That's the military bases are always good for us. It's a constant turnover of new people coming in. A lot of military guys love comics. A lot of military women love comics. It's a very popular hobby.
I would also say, just from a practical point of view, it's pretty easy to take along with you.
Exactly.
to move out. So that So you're down in Lexington Park, and I've been in that store. It's smaller. It's nice. It looks very similar to Annapolis with the black and white check floors and the walls, and again a good staff. I bought I can't remember the game I bought, but it was a card game about knowing. What do you know about the people, your best friends? I guess.
Yeah. It might have been Werewolf or something.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I think we bought an expander pack of the Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah.
Which is always an amusing game to play. And recently you moved down into Richmond.
Yep.
And how did that come about?
Yeah, the Richmond story is an interesting one, and it kind of illustrates the most important aspect of our business and what makes things work for us. We had a customer who reached out to us. So somebody was a customer of ours at our Annapolis store for years, and just randomly he reached out and said, "Hey, are you guys looking for work? For help up in Annapolis?" And I said, "Well, what's going on?" Because I knew that he actually worked as a manager at a store down in Richmond. And he said, "Well, hey, the store I work at they're going to be closing in June, and I'm looking to get a job." And I was like, well, let me talk to the owner. And I knew the guy, and he, just from knowing him as a customer, I had a very high opinion of him. He had worked at Barnes and Noble up here in Annapolis.
This is the owner? Was it
the manager?
The manager, okay.
Yeah. And he had great people skills, which is always the first thing I look for. And then he had great retail, sensibilities because, he had that history working at Barnes and Noble. He had the history working at the comic shop.
So light bulb started going on in your head?
Yeah. So I was like, this is... And he was cool. He's somebody that I had a relationship with that I could trust. I talked to the owner of that store. We worked out a deal, and basically, we bought the assets in the inventory, and we rebranded it as Third Eye Comics Richmond. It's doing really good. We're happy with it. It's a much smaller scale, but we got a great team down there, and the people and the customers are great down there.
What's next?
Honestly, I think that I'm going to take this next year to kind of just tighten up,
breathe.
Yeah, just breathe, kind of conserve, I'll be 37 in June, so I'm
really old.
I can't pull the all-nighters like I used to. I've tried, and I'm starting to feel that. So I think this year is going to be more about trying to get my health in order and make sure I can keep that energy up. And then I think in about 2-3 years before I'm 40, then I'll go crazy again and open 3 more stores.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're actually not in Third Eye Comics right now. We're in the brain, the nucleus of the organization, but there's another sort of an administrative office back on Margaret Avenue.
Yeah.
And you've got a big warehouse behind here. So you're doing an awful lot of online stuff.
Yeah, we do. We do a good amount of online.
Is that where Middle America that doesn't have the comic books do? Is they go to you?
A lot of folks do. Yeah, a lot of folks will order online with us. There's a lot of areas that just don't have a lot of the comic shops in Middle America. It's one shop for every 4 hours. And that's just not realistic. People will drive an hour. They're not going to drive 4 hours.
Right. They're going to go for if they have an event or something, maybe, but not.
Yeah.
I guess what percentage of your business is online? Is it growing? Is that
It's growing, yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe 10%.
See, that's 10, so funny because
10 to 15.
I see that there's businesses in downtown.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've got a different dynamic with where you are, and I'm sure rents and everything else. But I know some businesses in downtown Annapolis are just feeling the pinch on online shopping. I mean, and the big bad boy is Amazon, of course. I still think that's very strange, but I think it's very refreshing.
Yeah.
That 90% of your customers are coming to you because they want to, turn the pages and and feel the product in their hand as opposed to tapping away on a keyboard.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about, with brick and mortar, it's all about the experience. And it's just, it's the sense of discovery, it's curation. There's so many things. When we, with Third Eye, we're not looking at it as just setting up a store. We want you to feel like you're coming to Disneyland. You know what I mean? This is it's
without the wristbands and the
without the wristbands
and the $100 admission.
Yeah, we're a lot but a lot quicker than Disneyland. But no, we really want it to be something where it's it's Saturday. We're going to Third Eye. We're going to get some comics. We're going to check out some toys. We're going to check out some games. And it's that sensory overload of oh my God, there's a giant life-size alien head on the wall.
What's your measurement? I mean, how do you measure? I mean, I know I was talking to somebody who was talking about a retail clothing store and said that we sell X dollars per square foot. And I know that doesn't work on absolutely everything. But I mean, do you measure the time spent in stores? I've got to think that the average customer for you probably spends a hell of a lot more time in your store than the guy that goes to the 7-Eleven or the guy that goes to even Macy's or something.
It's hard to really gauge it. I've tried. But we have so many different, we have probably 8 different customer types in terms of what kind of, because you have some folks that just pre-order. And they pre-order stuff through us because of the scarcity. Okay. And they're not in the store very long at all.
Counter, credit card out.
Exactly. And then you have some folks who come in and they like the experience of us kind of walking them through and talking about the books and guiding them through what they're checking out and that sort of thing. Those people are usually in the store a while. You have some people that are really into collecting vintage comics, which we carry, and they can come in and be in the store for a good hour just searching through the bins. At the game store, some of our clientele will be in the store 3 to 4 hours because we have the play space in the back, and they'll just be kind of, hanging out, maybe socializing with another player. We have so many different types of customers. It's really, really hard to gauge. Yeah.
You ought to get like a beer and wine license.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Keep him here longer. But
yeah, right?
Coming in blind to this, what is the most surprising thing about Third Eye Comics or Third Eye Games and Hobbies that most people wouldn't know, do you think? That you maybe it's a product that you have or a service, or what's just something like somebody would go, wow, I didn't know that.
We literally have something for everybody. So you can come into our store and not be into, superhero comics. You can come into our store and not be into board games. We have something for everybody. So that could be, like at Third Eye Comics, the comic shop, we have an entire corridor of the store that's just book product, and it's books on art, it's books on filmmakers. I have a giant book on Martin Scorsese I just got in. It's books on like music. The tagline for all the books is "Books Too Weird for Bookstores," but
okay.
But we have that kind of stuff. We have books on like how to make art. We have things like that. We have art supplies. Just so many different types of things that there is literally something for our store for everybody.
Well, I know it is a good store for Christmas gifts.
Oh yeah,
and holiday gifts and birthday gifts and everything else like that as well. I know you've got there's collectibles and there's figurines, and I think I've seen a bobblehead or two every now and then. But it's the nice thing, and again, I'll reference my girlfriend and her daughter again on heading to the beach this summer or last summer, I guess it is. A perfect stop.
Oh yeah,
on the beach. Okay, you've got. On a good day, you've got 2.5 hours ahead of you.
Yep.
On a bad day, you've got like 3.5 weeks until you get there. So, you're very convenient. Obviously, the location you're very convenient to Route 50, and getting on and off. We're
very conscious of that when we moved from West Street to over here too. We wanted to still be right there.
And I think it's it's a perfect thing. For if you're going to the beach, if it rains, there's your entertainment, whether it be games, whether it be books, or just having some fun, and look for the events. What's the best way to get in touch with not you necessarily, but Third Eye? Is it? I know you're all over Facebook, and
so the best way to keep an eye on us, obviously, thirdeyecomics.com is kind of the hub. That's where we post everything, the central space. But if you want to follow us on a day-to-day basis, facebook.com/Third Eye Comics. That's our most active platform. We're also on Twitter, twitter.com/Third Eye Comics. And we also are on Instagram, instagram.com/Third Eye Comics. And we update those daily, and we check the inboxes daily, and we're pretty active on social media. So if you need to get a hold of us, and then, the best way to really, reach out to us, if you're just like, hey, I want to check this out, or I have a question or something, just pop in the store. That's like literally the number one, I can't stress enough when I talk to people when I'm doing conventions. I'm like, we have a great experience for online shopping. We have a great fulfillment team, but the in-store experience is just, it's really, really good. We really like it when people come in and we can meet them and shake their hand and introduce ourselves.
Well, it is. You're, I don't want to say you're clerks, but you guys are consultants to a degree. It's, if you're looking for a gift, well, okay, what's the person into? What was this?
Exactly.
And okay, well, you're not going to go with the Batman thing. You're going to go with something a little bit more realistic, or, less fantastical or more fantastical or something like that. Which is, I think, is brilliant in that you're consulting, and you had mentioned, we sort of guide you along the process as to where it is, and obviously you've got some insider knowledge as to what's coming out. And, and everything else there. So I think that it's great. I know you've got 100 and some odd thousand on Facebook that are all over, and I do recommend coming into the store and checking it out.
Thank you.
It's been. You said 2008?
Yeah, going on 11 years.
Where did Third Eye come from?
It's funny. So when I decided, when I quit the last job and I was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to open a comic store. I didn't know when I was going to do it. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just started saving money. I was like, I had a name. I was like, well, I want something I can spell numerically, because at that point in time, people did still use the phone book. And I was like, if it's something I can spell numerically, I'll be at the very top of the listings when you open the phone book. And that doesn't really matter now.
Right, and A comics didn't sound too good.
Right, exactly. And then, well, you know, on top of that, the name, I wanted something that just sounded good when you shortened it, you know. And there's always been like kind of like just like, you know, references to like, you know, like the third eye and different religions and things like that, like being like a mystical portal to creativity,
right,
and things like that. And you know, I think that's kind of cool. And honestly, this is probably the nerdiest answer, but probably the most true. There was a really great Swamp Thing comic series by a guy named Alan Moore who did. He also did Watchmen and V for Vendetta. There was a bookstore in there called Third Eye Books. And it was a completely fictional bookstore and all, but
okay.
I just was like, oh, that'd be kind of neat, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of a neat name for a bookstore.
Well, it also worked out well because you're also shortened. I mean, I very rarely hear somebody say, "Oh, I'm going to Third Eye Comics,"
exactly,
or "I'm going to Third Eye, you know, games and hobbies." It's I'm going to Third Eye.
Yep, exactly.
End of the conversation, and so it's a nice and short name there. Well, Steve Anderson, thank you very much. Congratulations on more than a decade of time here in Annapolis, Richmond, and Lexington Park, and all the other places in between. You know, come on out, Chinquapin Round Road, right at Margaret Avenue, just past Margaret Avenue, between Margaret and West Street.
Yep.
There might be another little street on the other side there that I forget, but I get the streets here in the design district confused. But,
yeah, you won't miss us. You'll see the big crazy eyeball guy painted on the front of the building.
The crazy eyeball guy. His staff is wonderful, and you know, congratulations. I'm looking forward to what the next 10 years brings.
Hey, thanks a lot, John. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this special podcast for Ion Annapolis. Please be sure to visit ionannapolis.net for all your local news, events, and opinions. And in case you haven't already, please subscribe to the Ion Annapolis Daily News Brief, where we bring you your local news direct to your phone or tablet every Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Subscribe on iTunes or Google Play.